Okay, going to talk about the 1,000-year reign, the millennium. A lot of times people have asked me, Justin, you say all Bible prophecy has been fulfilled. Then how is it that you're able to explain the 1,000-year reign? Was it something that took place in the past, 1,000 years of peace, or is it 1,000 years of peace that we're looking forward to in the future, or are we living in 1,000 years right now? How do you explain this millennium? Well, I explain it very simply to an individual and say that it's a hoax. It's a myth. It is a misunderstanding. Basically, what's going on here is, again, one of my favorite topics, it seems. It's imagery language not being understood and religious tradition being pushed and followed from generation to generation to generation. That's all it is. So what are my arguments against the 1,000-year reign? Why do I say it doesn't exist? Argument number one is that in the entirety of the Bible, no person makes mention of a literal 1,000-year time period. No one makes mention of it at all in the entirety of the Bible, Old or New Testament. In fact, the only mention that you'll find of the 1,000-year reign in the entire Bible, all 1,200 pages, is in Revelation chapter 20 by John. And John, by the way, as I've said many times, is having a dream vision. He's detailing a dream vision that he had to us. It's primarily imagery language, which needs to be interpreted. But yeah, no one in the entire Bible mentions the 1,000-year reign. A verse that comes to mind a lot of times is all Scripture is given by the inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine. So you should be able to look into the Scriptures, other Scriptures, especially the Old Testament, to find the basis of doctrine. You cannot do this with the 1,000-year reign because no one in the Bible mentions it. Huge red flag right there that you're following a religious tradition instead of what the text actually says, being that no one in the Bible mentions it. Lots of people mention a kingdom. No one mentions 1,000 years. There's many passages that are used in the Bible, especially from Isaiah 11 or Zechariah 14, that are said to be about the 1,000-year reign. Go examine those passages for yourself. 1,000 years is never mentioned, which means that they are discussing this 1,000-year time period. 1,000 years isn't mentioned. 1,000 years is a long time, by the way. America has only been a country for, I think, 300 years. So 300 times 3 is 900. So even if you took the length of how long America's been a country times 3, it's still 100 years short of 1,000 years. You're talking about a very, very long time period. Everyone in the Bible should be anticipating that thing coming to pass. Or at least people should be looking forward to it. No one is looking forward to it. No one mentions it in the entire Bible. This is an enormous red flag. So that's argument number one. No one mentions it. Argument number two is that 1,000 is frequently figurative in the Bible. There's lots of examples in the Bible of 1,000 not being literal. I've covered this before, but the example I use a lot of times is Psalm chapter 50, verse 10, where essentially God says, or the psalmist says, God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Well, what about 1,001? What about the millionth hill? What about the 100,000th hill? Does he own the cattle on those? Of course he does. No one looks at that verse so literally that 1,000 becomes literal. That is the issue with the 1,000-year reign. Same exact thing. It's imagery language, not intended to be taken literally, or figurative language, if you will. So argument number two is that 1,000 is frequently non-literal in the Bible, which brings us to argument number three, which is that the 1,000 years is never defined outside the vision. Look, Revelation chapter 20 is only 15 verses. Not a lot of text to deal with here. It's not difficult to kind of suss through all this and see what's being discussed. Revelation chapter 20 opens up like this, literally. Verse 1, 2, and 3, I think, go essentially like this. An angel comes down out of the sky. He has a key. He sticks it in the planet, turns it, releases a reptile. The reptile is identified as being Satan. Satan is taken and put inside of a jail for 1,000 years. Now, what part of that do you expect to see with your eyes? None of it? That's right. Just as you do not expect to see any of those things actually literally happen before your eyes, you should not be expecting the 1,000-year reign to be literal. The 1,000 years is never defined outside the context of the vision. If you don't expect to see any of the details of the vision literally, you shouldn't be expecting to see the 1,000 years literally either. That's argument number three, which of course leads us into the next issue, which is what is Revelation 20 detailing then if it's not detailing a literal 1,000-year time period? I say Revelation 20 is dealing with a couple things, but primarily it's dealing with martyr redemption, same issue throughout Revelation. Revelation as a whole is dealing with this. As you can see, the individuals have been beheaded. These are, of course, martyrs. Who is the killer of the martyrs in the Bible? It's the Jewish authority structure. So again, you got to think context, storyline. All right. So martyr redemption is being dealt with. And then what else are we seeing inside there? We see a limiting of Satan's power until a time period when he can really express his power again fully. I say that the 1,000 years is actually detailing a 40-year time period, roughly from 30 some AD to roughly 70 AD when the temple was destroyed. So we're looking at from Jesus' ascension until the destruction of the temple. That's 40 years. 40 years in the life of a man, by the way, is a long time. Dang near, might as well be 1,000 years if it's 40 years for a man, from a man's standpoint. So it is detailing a long time period. That's what 1,000 is detailing. 70 AD, of course, is the fulfillment of all biblical prophecy. That is when God, or Jesus, if you will, triumphs over Satan. What is Satan doing inside of the vision of Revelation 20? Well, he is leading an army to come and destroy the city of God. But it's imagery language. It's talking about how Satan is even going to use the Gentiles to persecute the saints. Okay? God overcomes them and destroys Satan. Who is Satan according to the context then? Satan is the individual who is organizing this whole persecution of the killing of the martyrs, the persecuting of the saints. Who is this? Well, according to the gospel storyline, that is the Jewish authority structure. According to Revelation, it's the Jewish authority structure. Okay, so when you see at the end of Revelation 20, at the end of that war, fire comes down and consumes Satan and his army. You're again looking at God's triumph over Satan and the redemption, of course, of the martyrs. This, of course, was accomplished in 70 AD. That's when the persecutor of the saints was destroyed. So once again, you're looking at a fulfilled biblical prophecy. I got the article down there at the bottom like usual, guys, and that's it. See you later.